Well, first of all, congratulations on your career as a whole. It's been wonderful to see all your work throughout the years for the last, what, 30 years now?
Yeah, unfortunately, 30 years.
I'd
Or or fortunately, I guess every
like to
day I kind
discuss,
of go,
I'd like to discuss a few,
what?
I want to discuss a few sketches, but first I'd like to talk about your career just a bit. How did you initially land at SNL?
How did I actually get here?
Yeah, what was your origin
It's
story for your for
my
SNL?
my origin story is uh I'll tell the very short version, which was um I was living in Los Angeles, getting ready to work on a film in Arizona, and Lauren had come back and he hired a whole new group of people and costume designers and such. And so, in hiring new people, he hired a new costume designer, and that costume designer, Pam Peterson, hired a friend of mine, Melina Root. And Melina called me and said, "Hey, do you want to come back to New York?" And I had gone to school with Melina, and so I came back, and we came back, and I was here for 3 years as a assistant PA type, and then I left, uh, and then came back about 4 years later. Again, not thinking that I would be coming back, but I had gone back to graduate school, and so somehow found myself back at SNL, and 30 years later, I am still here.
Was there, now the show had been on the air for about 2 decades at that point. Was there any kind of learning curve coming into a season, going to a show that had been on for that many seasons already?
Well, I am remiss to say I didn't really grow up on SNL. Like I didn't I like I remember as a kid I did a social studies slash civic kind of um we were paired off in groups, and my partner was this guy, who was in my class. His name was Tim Pageant, and Tim had been watching Saturday Night Live as a kid and all that sort of stuff. This was like in ninth grade or something, eighth grade. And so he came to me, and so we were paired off, and he was like, "Okay, there's this new show called Saturday Night Live, and they do this thing called Weekend Update on it." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And he was telling me all about it and explaining to me what Weekend Update was, and that we were going to do our social studies civics presentation to the class a la Weekend Update. And so that was sort of my first real introduction to Saturday Night Live. And then, certainly by the time I was in college, I was, invested and sort of knew all about it and all that sort of stuff. But I didn't, I was a kid of the theater. And so when I came to work on the show, that was my relationship to the show. And the show, Saturday Night Live, is the closest thing you can kind of get to doing live theater. And that's, I think, the inherent DNA to the show is live theater. And so I think of that, having been in the theater and grown up in the theater and all that sort of stuff, it sort of spoke to me that way. And I think so it was sort of easy for me to kind of just jump in and sort of be like, oh wait, I sort of understand that. Although it's sort of like doing theater on steroids because it's so fast and you have to learn to kind of trust your instincts and work very quickly.
What is a typical week at SNL for you as far as your schedule is concerned? I imagine it's hectic and chaotic to say the least.
It is, and but the show does have a really, really specific rhythm, and it's of course the rhythm of the week all builds up to Saturday and to dress rehearsal and that sort of stuff. And so there's sort of this kind of every day is sort of a lulling into more and more and more and more and more into it. Just sort of each day they add more and more, and so Tuesdays we shoot these promos, and sometimes I'll call them, back in the old days, we used to do the photo shoots on Tuesdays. So we used to do the photo shoot and the promos with a host on Tuesday, and then after those things were done, the host would go upstairs and um, start working with the writers and getting ideas ready for the read through, which is on Wednesday. Wednesday's the read through, and so you know, the writers have to turn in their scripts Wednesday morning, and then we read about 40 scripts on Wednesday afternoon, starting around 4 o'clock, and then we go into a meeting where we kind of discuss the 40 sketches and try and narrow those 40 sketches down to about 15, anywhere from 13 to 15 sketches. And that includes the film pieces. And also that includes some of the stuff that we haven't written yet, like the cold opening usually, or weekend update, or those sorts of things. But we try and get from that meeting the general organizational aspect of the show. And after that is done, then we break into sort of different segments and different departments. And so, like, the set designers are in one room, and the sets and the wardrobe, costumes, hair and makeup are in another room with the props. And so each one of those areas, the cast and the writers go to talk about their sketches and what they think and what they envision their hair and makeup and clothes to look like. And so by this point, it's probably 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night sometimes, and then we sort of have gathered enough information, all of us have gathered enough information from that meeting, where we just sort of run to our different offices and just start. But in earnest, we start about 7 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and that's when we really start pushing forward, getting everything done, and organizing and what needs to get done where. And Thursday is spent trying to get all the film unit stuff together, and the film, helping them get all that. So they have, the live show has 48 hours to do the show, but the film unit has 24 hours to do the show.
Right.
So there's a lot of Thursdays are a lot of help with that. Now, Thursday for the host, in the old days, like I said, the photo shoot was done on Tuesdays. Now the photo shoot is usually done on Thursdays. So Thursdays for the host has become a very busy day, because they have to, do a photo shoot, do rehearsal, get everything done. And so Thursdays, we finish around 10 o'clock now at night, and then come back on Friday. And Friday we start anywhere from 7 a.m. Sometimes the film unit starts a little earlier than that, and then we go to about 1 a.m. in the morning on Friday, and then Saturday comes and we start at 8 a.m. and go to 1 a.m.
So how big is your department? Like, how many people are you working with to get these costumes cranked out?
I have a team. So the film unit consists of about 7 people. The live unit consists of about 8 people, just in the design aspect of it. And then there's the wardrobe area, which can, 4 tailors, 3 stitchers, 2 wardrobe people. Like, it's bigger than the team is bigger than you think, but it is amazing how much you end up using all of them. There's
Sure.
probably, I think the difference, say, when I started, which there were probably 300 people who worked on the show, and now there's about 1,000 people who work on the show. Not just in my department, clearly,
Right, right.
but over the course of that 30 years, I have watched it grow and grow and grow.
So I'd like to talk about some of the sketches from this past season, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah.
Kristen Wiig episode had a handful of
Yes.
disease.
Yeah.
La Maison du Bang, which
Oh
is a
yeah.
French
Yeah.
variety show. You're given the task of creating a wardrobe of costumes for a 70s French variety show. Where are you drawing your
Yeah.
inspiration from?
Well, the beautiful part of being here this long is watching how the internet has been able to influence all of us who work on the show. And the back in the old days, we used to have to go to the library to quickly find inspiration, and now the computer can provide lots and lots and lots of information for us, and Instagram and all these sort of stuff. And so we were looking at Disco Bambino and all of these kind of French and Italian. There's a lot of Italian variety show small clips on Instagram, and visual imagery on the computer and on Getty Images and Google Images and all that sort of stuff. And so that provided us a lot of. Initially, we were looking at like Serge Gainsbourg and all these sort of like beautiful interesting French people from the 70s. And then we sort of started looking at this thing called Disco Bambino, and it providing us with a lot of like beautiful inspiration. And so we sort of had settled on a color palette of like sort of lilac and rose and sparkle and that kind of 70s overtones. And then with Kristen's one-legged jumpsuit, randomly my incredible assistant Ashley we went out because we knew we had to make it, and so she found this amazing spandex which literally combined every color that we were using into the color palette, and it was just like, oh my god, how often does that work, that there is some sort of perfect fabric that sort of speaks to the entire sketch,
Right.
and funny enough that you should say that is like literally, you
Oh.
probably can't see this, but there is like on my desk, there is an inspiration photo. I keep it because Kristen was um, so funny in that sketch. And I adore Kristen, and she can make so many things work. And so she was just it was so great to have her back to work on this.
The same episode, Secretaries, which is kind of a 60s Mad Men inspired
Oh yeah.
sketch with John Hamm guesting. I know in that case, are you able to, I mean, you've got almost 50 years worth of costumes and wardrobe lying around. Are you able to utilize stuff that and there had been 60s sketches prior to this. Were you able to utilize,
Yes.
or are you making it from scratch again?
No. I mean, some of that stuff. So that's a character that Heidi had done a couple of months before. So that we had Heidi's character's look from before. But Kristen's, we had to come up with a whole new version, which was similar to Heidi's, and there were tricks that had to be done, and like her blouse had to fly off, her skirt had to fly out. So there were sort of tricks in the vernacular of the 60s that we had to do, and then we did have one or two of the suits, and then I had to go vintage. Early Halloween is a really amazing vintage place I go to a lot, and I sort of ran there early Friday morning to borrow some of the suits from them to get them. And yeah, I think there was a little bit of a mishap in that with the hair and makeup. I think I think ultimately, when Bowen got his wig on, there was some glue that had fallen onto his costumes. There might
Oh,
be in one of I don't know if it was the dress or the air show, but I don't know which one you saw. But we were able to use some of the things we have here and find new things for inspiration. But yeah.
we can update that episode. You had an earthquake and eclipse come
Oh
on.
yeah.
Can you just walk me through the process of designing costumes for such abstract ideas?
Yeah, that was a fun. My assistant actually had a fun time on that one as well. So how we went through several iterations of the New York earthquake, and how that was going to represent itself, and sort of how we could get the buildings to shake, and on springs, and how it had to fit on the head, and they wanted to have this sort of Lego quality to it, and have it also, like this sort of school, high school kind of science project, Lego inspired graduation cap feel to it, using all the words to you that they were using to us, and how we had to then translate that idea into but it was, and so we ended up doing some of the stuff was we started doing this really great stuff with 3D printing. So some of those buildings we were able to 3D print onto, like, I think the Empire State Building we 3D printed, and the Statue of Liberty, and then at the last minute we sent one of our PAs out into Times Square at like 9 o'clock at night to go find a yellow cab at one of the tourist bodegas. And so she ran out very quickly and came back very quickly, and then just sort of quickly put that on a spring so that it could, jumble around.
I think one of the comments on YouTube was that I'm not sure what's more impressive, that they made a costume for an earthquake or that nothing fell off.
Yeah, well, we literally praying to God that nothing was going to come off, because they were very delicately put on, because it was the thing where they did need to move on springs, but at the same time you didn't want them to go flying off. So it was just sort of like it really needed to hold for 10 minutes, but also we didn't know how hard Marcelo was going to move his head and do all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's very delicate balancing sometimes.
For the Maya Rudolph episode, you went full diva for Maya's monologue. What was the inspiration for her outfit and for the backup dancers?
Well, she came in and sort of was like, okay, I want to do this mashup between Madonna and Beyonce, and have it represent everything of every kind of mother. And the television show Legendary, which was I think it was on HBO, and that, I think there were maybe 3 seasons of it, and that was basically a competition show about based on the 1980s ballroom scene, which was competition, and it was a dance competition amongst the houses of the Bronx, and that sort of stuff. And so there were a lot of visual referencing that we were doing in that. And so we just went full on Madonna, Beyonce with Maya, and she was like, no, I want to be in a a structured one piece leotard that snatches my body and represents mother. And so we sort of, as you can see, we leaned in a lot to Beyonce on that. And then the backup dancers, we sort of there was the writer initially showed me a picture from the Beyonce Renaissance tour, and I was like, I think we can do better, because I also hear overtones of Madonna and Vogue in that particular song. And so and voguing is very big in the ballroom scene, and so we really like sort of pushed in. And once I showed the writer some visual imagery from Legendary, I said, what if we mash up Vogue and all of this sort of Legendary visual imagery, and I'll give you some sort of more Madonna Renaissance tour funneled through the 17th century. And I think you'll be able to boy, girl, boy, gender fluid.
It reminded me of actually reminded me of Solid Gold.
Yes, there is. Yes, exactly. And there's I'm always influenced by Solid Gold. So I think it's an underrated television program. So yeah.
I know you I'm sure you're very busy. Just one more quick question regarding the Ryan Gosling episode, Beavis and Butthead, which has become one of the most iconic in the 50 years of the show, sketches of the show. Now, I just have a question regarding the shirts, the T-shirts. You use the shirts that they wear in their marketing, not on the actual show, not the band names. Was that a matter of clearances?
I think it was a matter of clearance, and I think we had done this. So we tried the sketch like earlier, like 5 or 6 years previous on a different host, and the sketch didn't make it, and the sketch wasn't funny for some reason. No one quite understands why, because it was, I would say, 70% still the same sketch.
Sure.
So, different actors, different situations. They updated the context. Keenan wasn't in it. Heidi wasn't in it. So, I think having those two people as the straight people, and Ryan in it really changed sort of the tone of that. And I think it was a combination of Mikey and Streeter, Mikey Day and Streeter, who wrote the sketch, and those were the t-shirts they really wanted to do.
Okay.
And so that came from them. That didn't come from us. And I don't know if they thought that we couldn't get the clearance or not, but sometimes I just push in. I just do what I'm told, and that's if I trust the writer and the actor, I sort of if that's what they want and they feel like that's going to make the sketch, I trust them enough to understand that they know what they're doing.
Well, again, I've taken up too much of your time at this point. Thank you very much for speaking with
Thank
me.
you.
And good luck with the
Thank
50th
you.
coming up. And again, congratulations on everything.
Great. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
a lot. Take care. Bye bye
Okay.
now.
Bye.